It's that Walter Mitty thing again. I love talking with my hands, but now I'm self-conscious of the moment. Welcome back to the Oak and Ember podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that wherever you are today, you are having a beautiful day. Woke up this morning, and the clouds are out. The sun is doing some cool stuff. Like, this is one of the benefits of filming outside. Someday when we get a little bit more established, wherever I set up, I hope I can still be some version of outdoors because I love it. Getting up in the morning gets me excited, surrounding myself with beauty. Man, I hope you're having a beautiful day. So glad you're here. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be a part of this. And look, here's the deal. If you only have 30 minutes a week in order to grow as a human being, I hope that you will continue to consider this podcast, because my whole goal is to help you live a transformed, meaningful, beautiful life. Live life to the fullest. And if you've only got 30 minutes a week to do that, I hope you keep considering, keep coming back to this podcast, and keep finding value in what it is we're doing here. Man, it is a great day. We're going to be talking about Truth Part 2. And really what happened is I got to the end of the episode, got everything loaded, got everything edited and all the post-production and all that. And I just thought, man, there's more I want to say about this, because I think it's such a pivotal part of living a full life. Truth is so important. And this really hit home for me about 10-ish years ago when I was in a small group of men who ran together once or twice a week. Just 4 guys, just the 4 of us, all different backgrounds. We'd get together and we would train for long distance running. Some of us were running for marathons, some of us were running for 5Ks. We'd get together and we'd do these long runs. And I loved it, man. There was some real camaraderie when men get shoulder to shoulder and do stuff. I don't know that men were necessarily made to sit across from each other and drink coffee and talk about life. There's nothing wrong with that. If that works for you, awesome. But my best, most meaningful conversations have come when I'm doing stuff with other men, and then in that context we're talking about life. So the 4 of us were running, and we all came from different backgrounds, different denominations, different churches, different upbringings, all kinds of things. And one of the guys that ran with us was this former soldier in the military. And I'm not going to say a lot of details because his story is his story, and I don't want to do anything with that I'm not welcome to do. But the guy was, just one of my favorite human beings on the planet. And what I loved about him is, he's in this small running group with a bunch of Christians, and he doesn't believe in God, and he doesn't believe in Jesus. And it made for some of the absolute best conversations. And one time we were talking about the holidays, right? So we're in December, it's the holidays. First of all, if you are in a place right now where you're getting some snow, you're getting some cold weather, please go outside and just bathe in it for a minute. Just get out there, get in the snow, and soak it up for a minute, please, because right now in Texas, it's like 80 degrees in the afternoon, and it's December, and honestly, I feel like that's a little intolerable. I'm really hoping we can get some cold weather before too long. Anyways, we're running together, the 4 of us, and my friend, this former soldier, starts talking about the holidays, and he says, you know what? Oh, that's how we got there. We got to the topic of Santa Claus. Now, growing up, we did Santa Claus. Mom and Dad, I love you. I don't care that we did Santa Claus. There's no judgment here. No judgment. Look, you do Santa Claus, that's great. Spoiler alert, if you have kids around nearby, we're going to talk about Santa Claus. Okay? So we're running, and we're talking about the topic of Santa Claus. Do we do Santa Claus? We're about to have kids. At this point, my wife and I were pregnant with our first, and we're talking about holidays because we're reevaluating every tradition we have. Everything that we think about, we're talking about it. So we're talking about Santa Claus, and he says, you know what? The problem with Santa Claus is that we spend our lives telling our kids to tell the truth, and the first thing we do is lie to them. And we tell them about this guy that doesn't exist. And man, that hit me like a punch to the chicklets. And he was so right. We talk to our kids all the time about truth and honesty and integrity. And then we turn around and we lie to them about Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy and all these other American myths that we promulgate for who knows why. I don't know why we keep doing this. Like, first of all, why do we spend all this money on Christmas presents and then give the credit to somebody else? Like, no, thank you. So in our house, we don't do Santa Claus because I tell my son the truth and I want him to tell the truth, and I'm not about to set him up to discover that Dad's a liar. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nuance to this, and I understand. If you do Santa Claus, that's your choice, that's fine. But what are we teaching our kids in our traditions? I think it's worth reevaluating that. So we're going to continue the conversation today about truth. And really this started for me with a podcast episode from Jordan B. Peterson, where he had John Vervaeke, I hope I said that right, John Vervaeke, Jonathan Pageau, and Bishop Barron, Father Barron. So it's Jordan B. Peterson and these three other guys. And the episode, if you want to watch it, is called The Four Horsemen of Meaning. And it's one of the best podcasts I've listened to in a while. Because these four brilliant human beings, like a level of intelligence I don't even dream about possessing because it's so far beyond me. Anyways, I digress. So these four guys are talking about culture with the underlying presupposition that there is a meaning crisis in society today. And I think they're primarily talking about Western society. I don't think they're talking globally. I think they're talking more about westernized countries. And there's a crisis of meaning. And first of all, I agree wholeheartedly. There is an enormous crisis of meaning. And I see this all the time when I work with young people, because I can't tell you how many times I go into a classroom and I talk to our older kids, like middle school, high school age, and every one of them struggles with, why am I here? What is the purpose of this class? This is boring. This is dull. Like, we've lost even the simplest meaning behind education. Our kids don't even understand why they need to go through the rigor and difficulty of education. So yeah, I do agree there is a crisis of meaning in Western society right now. I think that's in part because of what we're talking about today. We have a crisis of meaning because we have in part, not all of it, but in part because we have a crisis of trust. Sorry, I can see myself in the camera, and I watched The Secret Life of Walter Mitty last night, and I feel like that guy who introduces the transition for the Life magazine, and he does all these fake hand gestures, and I can see my hands moving, so I feel like that guy right now. It's not my goal. I love that movie. It's one of my favorite movies, and I am completely off topic at the moment. I think we have a crisis of meaning because we have a crisis of trust. And we have a crisis of trust because we've run into a crisis of truth. And if there was one particular area that I feel like we should, as a society, point ourselves back to, a North Star, an orientation, a point on the compass, I would argue it needs to be truth. From a spiritual standpoint, I would argue that point even further. You know, my wife and I are going through this spiritual journey of church and following Jesus and Christianity. And at the core of that search is our search for truth. And it's frustrating because so many different people are arguing that they have the truth, And yet they're in disagreement with all the other people who are claiming that they have what is true. So how do you know where to go and where to invest your spirit and where to give life and energy to a thing when you can't even figure out who is teaching truth? And so I think we have this crisis of meaning in society because we don't know who to trust anymore. And yes, I'm going to talk about COVID for a minute. Just a brief minute, and then I'm going to talk about other things. But you look at all of the stuff with COVID, right? You have all this stuff with COVID. And the biggest reason I believe people are hesitant about vaccines and masks and social distancing and careers and jobs and all of those things, I think the problem is we don't know who to trust. There are too many voices in our village. And in some regards, I really miss the simplicity of life without the internet. I recognize that we've created a lot of really good things with our postmodern society. But I miss the simplicity of living in a small village of not that I ever lived in a small village of 200 people, but the idea of it makes me miss the idea of it. But this idea that we lived in a small village where your access to truth was dependent upon what happened inside your village and a little bit of the surrounding villages, but that was it. Done. You didn't have endless gurus telling you what is true. And there are times where I get on the internet, or I get on YouTube, or I get on this news organization's website, and I just get flustered and frustrated because everybody's claiming to know truth, and there's all of this disagreement. And how do you know who to listen to? And I'm sorry, but Dr. Fauci is not a source of truth. I don't believe that. I believe he is a source of misinformation. He's become like the Pope of the scientific community, the one man whose one opinion matters the most. Now, that's not an anti-Catholic statement. What I mean is there's become this hierarchy within even COVID science with the almighty Dr. Fauci at the top, and everybody underneath that has to take their orders from him. And that, again, has created a crisis of trust because clearly the man is not trustworthy. So there's an example of how we've run into this problem of trust even with something as significant as COVID or our churches. Our churches are claiming to have exclusivity on truth, but there's this constant argument between our truth is right and that denomination's truth is wrong, and that Catholicism is wrong, and these guys are wrong, and those guys are wrong, and everybody's wrong except us. Now, I realize that's a generalized statement, and there's more nuance to that. There's more dialogue that's happening than that. But I think that's part of it. I think part of it is you can drive around most major American cities now and find three churches within a quarter mile who all claim to have the truth and who all claim that the people on the other side of them are wrong. I mean, it's happening right there. Not even a mile from where we're sitting, there are two radically different churches who are claiming to have the truth and claiming that the other one is wrong. So where do you go to in that situation? How do you handle the problem of trust and truth and finding a space to be where you can pursue a full life, a transformational life, and embrace truth? My neighbor just got in their car, and now we get to listen to their car noise for a minute. There are pros and cons to filming outside, ladies and gentlemen. The pros, I get a beautiful, beautiful skyline. The cons, I have to listen to people's car noise. Yep, that happened. So if we look at, if we look at this issue of trust, I think it goes back to the same principle that we talked about in the last episode of these circles that expand, right? The whole Mask of Zorro training circles. Such a cool idea. When it comes to personal growth, I think it's a fan-flippin-tastic metaphor. I think the crisis of trust starts with the same principle. We have to start with the innermost circle. Do we trust ourselves? Are we setting ourselves up for success when it comes to personal trust? For example, if you are on a weight loss journey, can you be trusted with a plate of cookies out on the counter in the kitchen? I personally, in different times of my life, would not trust myself with that. So I don't buy the cookies. But I think ultimately I would like to be a person who, if I were on a weight loss journey, or like where I'm doing more right now of the resistance training, body recomposition journey that I'm on, I'd like to be able to walk into my kitchen, see a plate of cookies, and be like, I don't need that. I love the way James Clear talked about it in an episode of Typology. I think it was Typology with Ian Cron. Talking about Atomic Habits, his book Atomic Habits. And he talked about how every action is a vote for yes or no for who you're going to be in the future. And I think it's exactly the same thing that applies to, do we trust ourselves? Every action either builds trust with yourself or erodes trust. It's that Walter Mitty thing again. I love talking with my hands, but now I'm self-conscious of the moment where I'm that guy, and it's difficult. Okay. Every action we take either builds trust with ourselves or it erodes trust. We need to be able to trust ourselves. We need to be able to do life to the fullest without wondering if we're going to betray ourselves or not. Right? Going back to the James Clear podcast interview on typology, are you setting yourself up for success and personal trust? I struggle with that sometimes. We have a very, very dear human being staying with us this weekend. And we got ice cream, and I ate a bunch of it. And I kind of think that might have eroded my trust a little bit, because I know that ice cream's not helping me with my resistance training and body recomposition. Man, it was good ice cream. Come on, HEB Creamy Creations. I'm just saying, it's good. But I eroded my personal trust a little bit. Because I know I don't need that. I know I don't need the enormous blue whale-sized bowl that I ate last night. But it was tasty, right? I feel like I'm about to have a Marcus Aurelius stoic conversation with myself about I wasn't made to eat tasty things. I was made to do good stuff. Anyways, what are you doing to set yourself up for success when it comes to personal trust? And are you being honest with yourself about that? Can you sit down and say, look, I chose to erode my own trust by dipping a giant bowl. It's taken me a long time to get to a place where I could do that, where I could say, okay, I know that my choices last night were not the best. I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I'm going to review these choices with a sense of equanimity, right? There's no shame in it. I made some choices. Now I need to make different choices. Can you sit down with yourself and be honest and speak the truth into the choices that you're making and who you want to be? Do you have a vision for who you want to be? And are you making truth-filled choices and decisions and thoughts that are pushing you towards that ideal version of yourself versus actions and choices that are eroding your trust? Because you can't, I believe this, you cannot go out into the world and seek truth and trust people if you don't trust yourself. I know that to be true for myself, and I've seen it in people that I'm coaching and kids that I work with. You cannot trust the people you work for if you don't trust yourself. You can't trust your spouse if you don't trust yourself. And there's varying degrees to that, and there's some nuance to that. But that's the reality. I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to lose that cloud cover and get completely washed out in the video. So I'm going to pause the episode, fix the whole video thing, and we'll be right back. All right, we're back. So that's the first circle. Do you trust yourself? And are you doing things to build trust with yourself? And then that second wider circle is, do you have relationships with some people that are helping you build trust? Do you have a small community of people? I'm not talking about a group of 30 people that you can build trust with. I don't think it works that way. More and more, I think it's a small group, 4 or 5. Do you have 4 or 5 people that you can rely on, that are truthful, that are going to tell you the truth? That's part of the deal. Do you have people that you can trust who will tell you the truth, who are going to look in your eyeball and say, hey, Garrett, that thing you did hurt my feelings. I don't like it. Please don't do that again. Or, hey, I see you doing these destructive things, and I care about you, and I'm asking you to stop. Do you have somebody in your life that will speak the truth to you? A spouse, a parent, a best friend, a neighbor, a small group community? Do you have people in your life that you trust who will speak truthfully to you? What you don't need are friends that will sugarcoat their words. What you don't need are friends who will be kind to your face and talk about you when they go home. You don't need that. That's not helpful. And if you have those kind of people in your life, you need to not have those people in your life, because they're not helping you live life to the fullest. So do you have personal trust? Do you have a small community of truth-filled people that you can rely on? And do you belong to something bigger than yourself? This is one of the things that I struggle with the most when it comes to atheism, because it seems so individualized that, wow, there comes the sun. Booyah. Good morning, sunshine. And a cloud. It's a great episode. Do you belong to something that is focused on pursuing truth? And this is where I feel like atheism runs into a problem, because at the end of the day, truth is based on what I believe to be true and what I agree with. See, the difference is, in a religion, there is something bigger that eventually you have to submit to. You have to submit to the idea that there is a bigger entity in this world who is governing the rest of creation. And at some point you have to say, I'm not that, and I need to come in line with the truth of what that religion teaches. And so I think when it comes to my fellow human beings who are atheists, the conversation I always want to have is, at the end of the day, what is your source of truth? Because if it's man-made and it's submitted only to your own opinion, that seems like a really hard place to be. Because it seems like truth is a thin layer of ice that's always cracking and flowing and moving. And it's not a firm foundation on which you can stand with 2 feet and shake your fist at the world and make things better. I don't think you can go toe-to-toe with the suffering and pain of the world like a boxer. I don't think you can Rocky Balboa this thing while at the same time having your feet on thin ice. It's a lot like Bruce Wayne in Batman Begins trying to go up against Ra's al Ghul on the ice, and he's always having to think about whether or not he's going to slip on the ice, because if you slip on the ice, like, that's it, you lose, it's over. And I feel like for my fellow human beings who are in the atheist camp, the sources of truth are like thin ice. And it's not I don't say that condemningly. Holy smokes, it got bright out here. I don't say that condemningly. I say that from the place of, like, I want the best, fullest, most meaningful life you can have. And I don't understand how that happens when truth is so relative. And when there isn't something bigger than yourself that you can put your trust in, that is good and faithful and true. So that's it, the three rings of truth. I don't know if that idea will stick, but golly, it got real bright. These 3 ideas, these 3 places from which you work out truth. Do you personally trust yourself? Oh, that's weird. Do you have a small group community that you can put your trust in? And do you belong to something bigger than yourself that gives you a firm foundation for truth? I think if you can answer those 3 questions and use those 3 questions as a place to launch out from in your pursuit of life to the fullest, which includes living truthfully, I think you will find the truth that you're looking for and will be a person of truth who can help transform our communities. Because that's what we need. We need people in our communities who are pursuing truth and who are pursuing life to the fullest. Because when we do that, our communities get better, our cities get better, our country gets better, our societies get better, the world gets better when we're pursuing truth. And that's all I've got for today. Hope you found this valuable, and as always, sorry, I'm looking at myself just completely washed out in the video. Man, if you're watching this on YouTube, bless you. Thank you for sticking around. Speaking of YouTube and iTunes and all those places, please make sure you're subscribing to the podcast. Stay with what we're doing. Yeah, I'm still in a place of wrestling with social media and how to market this thing and how to get this out to as many people as possible. And right now I need you to help with that. So share this with as many people as you know so that we can build a community of people pursuing life to the fullest. Subscribe, leave a rating and review on iTunes. That's the best way to help us grow. Leave some comments in the comments section. What do you think about all this? Does this even make any sense? Have a great rest of your day. Thank you for taking time out today to get some information on living life to the fullest. Until next time, get out there and live life to the fullest. Cheers, guys.